To answer the question, Mr. Heaton?
Yeah, the revenue is spread over 20 years. It is taxes and fees. $4.6 million to $7.6 million is 4.8 to 7.6 is taxes and fees. And this first question,
and if the corporation or company that was the developer or the leaser is a nonprofit organization, then there are no taxes, correct?
No. The developer could be either a for-profit or not-for-profit organization, and obviously the tax code they'll have to pay taxes on it. Those taxes would go to the federal government. The issue that I think you're raising is this property is assessed as a rental project, not as a typical for-sale project. So the assessment is up to your Board of Assessors, and it's usually based upon revenue, not property value.
Thank you.
Lady to the right.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Claire Smith. I have several concerns about this project. First of all, I'd like to say that I was at town meeting in 1977. We did have town council on staff in-house at $45,000 per year who gave advice to town meeting and to town boards and committees. There was a lengthy discussion regarding the taking of this parcel because of an agreement, I believe, with Campanelli, the owners of the property, who in their original development plans had included a playground and recreational area. So to my recollection, there was a large amount of discussion relative to keeping this for open space and recreation in keeping with the agreement with the Campanelli family. I have some questions and concerns about how this study was prepared for several reasons. Has anyone gone back to look at that agreement, and would there be any restrictions, or could the Campanelli family come back to this town should we not adhere to what the purpose of taking this land was for? And at a later subsequent town meeting, the town meeting voted to establish fields and grounds to look at this property, and I believe also voted funds to create a large recreation up there. So the intent was clearly for recreation and development, and I think that the Campanelli family might have some concerns about that. Generally, when an article on town meeting floor is voted for the study, the intent is to put together a committee. I have not seen any committee that's representative of all the entities in town that would be concerned with elderly housing. I think as a voter I would have preferred to have seen that we had included the Housing Authority, the Housing Partnership Trust, and Council on Aging to be part of a committee to do this study. So I'm really concerned that this wasn't an all-inclusive study. One of the other concerns I have is generally when you come back to fund a study, it comes before town meeting to appropriate the funds. How much have we paid Mr. Heaton, and where were those funds appropriated fund, and how did we authorize them, is a question that I have in my mind. So I think there are a lot of questions that this brings up.
Ladies and gentlemen, please wrap up.
I will. I think that we should seriously think about as to whether this was a complete study and whether or not we should really move into doing a more comprehensive study and take into consideration the land on Minot Ave that was not studied.
I recognize that you stand to answer the question, but however, I'm going to defer to counsel on the question of a reverter clause that was raised. Counsel.
Thank you. Mr. Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, we did make some effort to try to locate tapes of the meeting to hear the discussion, and I was very interested to hear what you had to say about it. It's not so much the discussion that occurred at town meeting that counts, it's the vote that was taken. And the vote that was taken was to take the property for general municipal purposes. So regardless of the discussion that may or may not have occurred, and I have absolutely no reason to doubt what you say, the vote was to take for general municipal purposes. Now, as to whatever wishes the Campanellis may have had regarding the use of the property, presumably those would have been recorded in the gift that they gave. That would be of significance, except that when you voted to take the property, you essentially extinguished whatever the conditions were in the gift. So really what you did was you took away the gift conditions. So that's why there wouldn't be a reversion issue with respect to the Campanellis.
to answer any other part of that question.
Other parts of the question, but in reference to what council just said, this was taken for tax title purposes, and my understanding of the law is that because it was taken for tax title and we took it ultimately under eminent domain, all of those clauses or any of those gifts or any of the conditions that that family would have set forth, as council has explained, would be null and void. As far as a committee, that's exactly the intent. After we pass this, the very first order of business for the Board of Selectmen will be to form a public committee, and it will be made up of members of the Finance Committee, Planning, Board of Health, Wareham Housing, Zoning, Board of Selectmen, the consultant, Mr. Heaton, and several ad hoc community members who may have some skills that we'll certainly need for this project. So there will be a rather large, probably a dozen members of a committee that will evaluate these 5 proposals. Here they are. They're very heavy. I had to lug these from the parking lot. It's going to take months to go through this kind of detail. I read 10 pages a night, and it's tough reading. So we're going to need a committee to spend an awful lot of time exhaustively to analyze these proposals. As far as a previous committee, we had a housing committee. We sunset that committee for various reasons. The study that we're relying on is DHCD's study, Department of Housing and Community Development. They issued the study. Mr. Heaton relied on it, as well as his own analysis and data. It's the state that is telling us that there is a housing need.
Is it time, ladies and gentlemen? Member of the FinCom.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. A couple of more points, additional points I just wanted to bring to folks' attention. You keep hearing elderly housing, elderly housing. Yes, it is going to be elderly housing. However, you're going to have a percentage of that housing that is going to have to be put aside for disabled individuals. Now, disabled individuals, and they could be 19, they could be 30. Oh, I'm sorry, it does.
Ladies
In the 202 program.
and gentlemen, she has the floor.
And the other issue I want to bring forward to you too is another possibility is you're going to have a certain percentage of this housing that is going to have to be devoted to the Department of Mental Health and Department of Mental Retardation. And you're saying that's not going to be true, Mr. Keaton?
Ma'am, you have the floor. Please
Okay.
express your opinion.
Okay.
If he
I
cares
just want to
answer.
make sure that all these issues are answered, because in the 202 programs that I've been involved with, I've had to deal with this, and it can be a large drain on your services.
To
That's all
answer
I
the
have.
question, Mr. Heaton?
There are different versions of the 202 program, and there are different funding mechanisms that come in place. This program is 100% affordable, seniors only.
Gentleman on the left.
David Hurd, Precinct 3. We've just spent the last hour talking about various ways of interpreting this article. Obviously, it is ill-conceived to present it to the town meeting tonight. I move that we move the question.
Motion to move question seconded, requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of moving the question, please hold up your card. All those opposed to moving the question? It appears to be unanimous. So we have the question before us, ladies and gentlemen. An amendment for indefinite postponement, which is a vote against Article number 2. All those in favor of indefinite postponement, please hold up your cards. and tellers, please take a